What's good, DWA fam? Thank you for tuning in to another week of Done With Adulting. For this episode, we wanted to share an experience that we had with the great Ashley Mitchell, who has been on the podcast before, and her husband, Mark. They host the Conversations and Courage podcast and asked us to be a guest. So hope you enjoy this insightful conversation.
Yes, we had so much fun, you guys. We know you're going to love it. So here we go.
All right. Happy Valentine's Day. Oh my God.
Happy Valentine's Day.
He always does this voice and it's like, it drives me fucking crazy.
Which is exactly why I do it.
At this point, it probably is exactly why you do it. We have like an unprecedented pod today because there's like 7 people on this Zoom.
It's awesome. It is awesome.
And I'm so excited because I just have this need to like bring all of these voices to you, and I'm going to let them sort of introduce themselves because it would take me forever to do it by myself, and I want you to hear from them. But yeah, anything? Do you have anything?
No, I'm just excited to get going.
Okay. So can I call on people and then let's go with question 1. What's your name? What's your superpower? And your why, like your reason for getting out of bed in the morning. I'm going to go in order of my screen. So Gavin, you are first.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gavin Smith. I am an educator. My superpower, I would say, is introspection. I think back to my roots being Jamaican, and I think a lot about like reggae music and folks like Bob Marley, and Toots and the Maytal and just the Ital reggae Rasta movement. And folks from my childhood have always been so reflective and so much value, put so much value on the earth itself and just thinking internally. And, a lot of things I recognize as an adult, I just do those naturally. So shout out to the ancestors for my superpower.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Gavin, I didn't see, this is why I love this because I have no idea who I'm talking to because I never get to go this deep with anyone. And what's your why, Gavin? Why do you get out of bed in the morning?
It is very simple. Education is the great equalizer. It is probably the most powerful, one of the most powerful tools that you can provide children. A great education, access to a great education has moved or can move mountains, has moved mountains in my life. And I want to be able to provide my students, the families that my students are part of, those same opportunities by any means necessary. So, I want everyone to be at the table, to have a seat at the table and to really mess up that table, right? Not to be there and just sit and listen, right? But to really do some powerful work, to share, their thoughts, unapologetically be themselves and make movements that we just haven't really seen in this country ever, really.
That's so amazing.
Please start a school before my child grows up so I can send him to you. That's all I think that's all I want to say. Alyssa, you're next, mama.
All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa Panozzi. I would say my superpower is authenticity. It is what I live by. I call myself Authentic Alyssa because if I'm not being myself, then that's just not me. And my why is my daughter. It's a very cliche answer, but it's just the truth. She's why I wake up every day. She's what drives me and motivates me to be myself so that I can just build this life so she can benefit from it, just like my parents did for me.
I love that. Thank you. Mike.
My name is Mike Panozzi. I think my superpower is probably crisis management. I think as a dad, it's something that you just kind of learn naturally. Not like I took a class on it in college or anything. But like being able to assess the situation. And sometimes it's just finding a solution. It doesn't have to be the right solution. And I think also, as I'm also an educator, I teach elementary school, and I think that kind of that type of thinking kind of helps me out a lot. So if a student is struggling, or if a student needs an extra help at something, to be able to think quickly and kind of adapt in that moment. So I think that's kind of my superpower. And my why is my daughter too. And not just my daughter, but I think my whole family. Mm-hmm. Like Alyssa said, we both came from parents who wanted us to be whatever we wanted to be, and who gave us every opportunity that they could to let us kind of grow and learn. And so being able to give her that type of childhood. And I think I just want to make everybody proud. Alyssa, my daughter, my parents, I just want everyone to be proud of me. And I think they already are, but that's kind of what pushes me to want to do more and to want to grow as a human.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but judging by your wife's Instagram, I would say that she's pretty proud of you and pretty proud to be married to you.
For sure.
So y'all are corny like us. So I love it.
It's awesome.
Oh, it's so gross, but it's so great.
So great. I love it. I love it. Okay. On to the professional podcasters. Last but not least, Asia.
Hi. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Asia Watson. I do a lot of different things, but I think my superpower is, I don't know, I feel like I'm very intuitive. I've been told I'm very intuitive. I really pride myself on the way that I'm able to just connect with people. And I don't know, I can kind of like tell when something's off with people before they say stuff. So I find myself always in these situations where people are just comfortable telling me things and feeling like they can come to me with stuff. So I think that's my superpower because I'm not always asking for that sometimes, but I'm always a listening ear. And then I think my why is everyone had such good whys so far. I was like, oh, what is my why? I think really my why, aside from my family, is just this idea of like creating generational wealth. And I feel like that's literally what gets me up every morning is like, I'm married, but we don't have kids yet, but like constantly my mind is thinking about what I can do now to prepare for my kids' kids. And I feel like, especially with my mom, who just went above and beyond with like raising us and establishing her career and was just a really great role model to give me more than what she had. And so I just feel like it's my duty to like do even better. So I think that's my why right now.
Yeah, everybody's like nodding, like yes. This is a big deal and something that we've been talking about.
Same
like
thing, yeah.
Before, like long before pregnancy, like I was just super clear of there were so many things I said that I was like, if these things can't happen, I am not going to be your baby mama. Like I was very like, right. Because I mean, especially for a kid of color, right? There's certain things that are necessities. And I think providing in that way and like providing that pathway is one of those. Thank you so much, Asia. Jared.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, so my name is Jared Gaines. I'm a co-host with Asia on the Done with Adulting podcast. I would say I really don't think I have a superpower, but if I had to choose, I would say my superpower is being laid back in the face of adversity. When a lot of things are going wrong, I seem to be the chill, like laid back one who kind of brings like a level head to everybody around. In regards to my why, I would say that my why and my purpose is family, like similar to what everybody else said. Very similar to what Asia said. My mom, she did a lot for me, so I definitely want to give back to her. As I'm growing older and getting deeper relationships with other family members, I'm starting to also look to give back to those family members as well. So I would definitely say my why is family.
Thank you. I do think, just from listening to the podcast, I do think that it's probably why you two work so well, is because Asia's a little more like me. Like she's like going off, and you're the one that's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, white people are racist. Like, what are you gonna, like, what are you gonna do? And
So matter of fact about everything, Jared. Like on the podcast, I'm always like screaming and like having these reactions, and he's like, "What do you expect? This is the normal."
Yes. But it's so perfect.
It works.
It
Yeah,
fits.
absolutely.
But that I don't. So I'm just like on. I know we have an order of questions, but I told y'all like I was just gonna like go off. So I want to ask. I'm starting with Gavin, just because like this idea of generational wealth and family is in my head now. So sorry, Mark, if you were gonna say something, I'm
No.
going. Gavin, what is liberation?
Wow, you started with that.
I know, I had to. I'm sorry. I knew you were going to be not ready.
I think about it in so many different ways. Just being able to, I have students every day come in and tell me what they want to be, who they aspire to be in life. And one of the videos that I've seen was one where Stephon Marbury did a documentary, and he's talking to a Black boy in the barbershop, and he says, has anybody ever told you you could be president? Did you know you could be president? And the Black boy is like, no. He's like, what if I told you you could change everybody's life in Coney Island by being the president of the United States? Has anybody ever told you that? And the young boy is like, no. And I think about sort of that idea that liberation for folks of color, financial freedom, my only hope, right? Jay-Z right there talking about it, right? Liberation for Black individuals has always been different than for white individuals. I don't talk about politics a lot, but I think you look at Trump, and for me, one of the big things is white mediocrity, right? You can never ever have a mediocre Black president. Look at Barack. What was so good about him? Everything. He was perfect.
Yeah.
Right? He had to be, right? And perfect by means of being good enough for everyone to be able to say, that guy is great, right? Barack doesn't look like me, even still, right? Because fair of a Black planet, when we're talking about it, I'm dark skinned, right? I might be rugged and raw. We're on here talking about me losing my job potentially, right? If I come out and say certain things, how I speak, what I say, my degrees, how I handle myself around people. And for me, liberation is none of that, right? It is literally the right to be who you want to be, how you want to be that person, right? And still accomplish this thing that we are talking about here now, right? Like having money, having a safe environment for your families to live in, not fearing for your life, not worrying about how to get food, not worrying about nourishment, right? Being free, being able to be free in the world, being able to be free in your thoughts, being able to get a good education, travel where you need to go without waiting for the 28 or 16 or 13, right? These many basic things that I think about as a person with privilege now, right? Recognizing that I didn't have those as a child. I didn't understand freedom and liberation as a child. I felt free, right? Because don't nobody know they're poor, right? You don't understand why you're eating mac and cheese every day and pork, right? Or McDonald's dollar menu, right? Happy Meals were treasures for me. They were a clear sign of poverty, right? So for me, it's like, it's not whiteness, right? Which I think a lot of people have have associated with, right? Go to these types of schools, do these types of things, go to Harvard, right? Harvard is going to give you that liberatory feeling immediately, right? But it's because of the network, it's because of the stigma, it's because of all of these things, right? And I want to be able to say, go to Morehouse, go to Spelman, go to wherever, right? Go somewhere Black, and experience those same things. Same for public schools. My experience at my school should be the same as anybody going to Newton. I won't care what any parent tells me. It is a problem if you are a parent or an educator in my school and you do not believe that your child and my child and our children should have the same things. It is a problem, right? That's not a liberatory practice. So liberation is a lot for me. I could talk forever. This could have been the whole podcast, but I'll leave it there.
Wow. Okay. So I'm just going to ask, because everybody on here is like smiling and nodding and just so with you. And does anyone want to say anything or want to give space to take that in or to comment or to share or anything before we keep going?
Yeah, I want to touch on his point about, I guess, white people being mediocre. Even if you look at like famous Black people, actors, athletes, singers, when Black people or when Black famous people have a little slight mediocrity or they're mediocre in a small point, we kind of talk bad about them. We look down on them. Mm-hmm. But I'm specifically thinking of movies right now and actors like Tyler Perry. When he comes out with a crazy, wild movie, everybody there's so much backlash and things like that. But there's so many other white producers, white directors, white actors who have their whole history of them acting is just mediocre. And we look at them, like it's nothing. But when it's a slight possibility of a Black person being mediocre, we just throw them out the window. And I think we do that as a culture as well. Mm-hmm. Not only white people, but also Black people as a culture. And we look down on our own people. So when he touched on mediocrity, I definitely felt that.
Yeah, me too. I was going to add to that, Jared. I just yesterday watched the Tiger Woods documentary.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I'm so glad we're on the same page.
He's been perfect this whole life.
Perfect his entire life. And then he goes through like these horrific traumas, and then his behavior reflects the compartmentalization of those traumas. Mm-hmm. And immediately the entire world who was like fawning over him, Black people and white people, are dragging him through. I mean, like, it was so fascinating to watch it. I think like it's so weird because we live it, right? Like I can remember when all the bad media about Tiger came out, but to watch it in a series of events put together like that and how mean people were and like unforgiving until he was back on top winning again. It's crazy to me.
And honestly, it's none of their business. Like if we're keeping it real.
It really isn't. But also people cheat, people lie. Like Tiger Woods was being human. Like, not that those were good things, right? Like, but he was also just being human. It's the same thing with the Martin Luther King documentary we just saw, where they tried to, FBI tried to smear him for cheating on his wife. Like, he's also just a human person who had an affair, like plenty of other people do. But right,
so I think that's the thing, right? The standards are just different, right? The expectations are different, even though the behavior is the same.
Yeah.
And all the positive things that they've done have definitely outweighed the negatives.
In the Martin negatives. Go ahead, sorry. In the Martin Malcolm vein, right? You know, I remember reading and researching, and Malcolm was seeing a therapist like twice a day. By the time he was, close to his execution, right? He was seeing a therapist twice a day because the weight of the world was so powerful. And you can just imagine, same with Tiger. I think of Dave Chappelle. I think of Jaleel White just came out with something recently. And I just watched something, as you're talking about, Jared, you're talking about movie depiction of mediocrity. I think a lot about many movies portray Black people in these mediocre ways. Was listening to something that Dick Gregory was saying about the Miles Davis movie, which was actually, what's the guy's name? I can't think of who it is right now. Who did the film? Don Cheadle, right? But Don Cheadle wouldn't have gotten the money if he didn't portray Miles a certain way. And Dick Gregory's like, this is a bad man. He went to Juilliard. He's classically trained, very stylish individual. And you showed him in 3 outfits in the entire movie. You didn't show a performance of him. This very talented individual. You just showed him chasing, white women and drugs and doing all of these different things, right? That was your portrayal of this legendary character, and it's just really unfortunate that that's the world that we see or our children get to see themselves in, and then you wonder and ask questions about why they perceive themselves in these ways. It's because it's all around them. I just watched a Burger King commercial and I was like, yeah, of course, like the 2 people going through the drive-through have to be, these Black individuals, and they have to speak this way and they have to do these things, right? Like, come on. It just doesn't make sense.
That definitely, Alyssa and Mike, I want to have this conversation about y'all and about Parker and about being biracial and raising a biracial daughter. And obviously your family dynamics are what they are, right? Like, I feel like we have that in common, as couples, but also Alyssa, your family has different shades of people, which so does mine. And so for me growing up, I thought Blackness came in all these different shades because that's what I saw from my family. And then, just as life goes on and as I was socialized into the world I was socialized in, I put values on those different types of Blacknesses and, all the things that we all know and know to be true. But how does all of this, everything that we've been talking about and maybe things that we haven't, play into your parenting and stuff?
I'm going to start with a really cool story that I actually just thought of, and I hadn't planned on sharing this, but I haven't even told you this. So, we could talk about this for hours. I feel such a strong responsibility to just raise Parker as a good person. And just to back up a little bit, my mom is white, my dad is Black. I'm the color that I am. Mike is white. We had no idea what Parker would look like, who she would be, who she's going to turn out to be still. I think, and I'll obviously let Mike share his own thoughts, but for me, like I said, it's just so important to have her start to understand who she is now. And the story I want to share is that I started noticing this a little bit, and I thought, no, Alyssa, you must be crazy. She's only 1.5. And I started to notice that whenever she sees someone with brown skin, she says, mama. And we were at Mike's parents' house on Wednesday. Yeah, I definitely didn't tell you this. And there's a picture of Mike's mom meeting Obama. And we said, who's that? And she said, Nana. And then we pointed to Obama and said, who's that? She said, mama. And it just hit me so hard. I could cry for many different reasons, but the most important reason being that she is starting to understand at her age of 20 months, different shades, I suppose. It's like she knows that he's a man, I would think, from just the way that she's growing up and what she's learning. But there's a book, Brown Bear, which I'm sure you guys have heard of before. And at the end, it says there's a teacher and it's a brown woman with glasses, and she always says mama. And when it's a white woman in any book, she doesn't say mama. It's so incredibly interesting to me that it I keep touching my heart. I know you can't see this, but it hits me right here because she's starting to understand. And like I said, I look at my own mother completely differently now because I walk down the street with this, she's lighter. I mean, Parker has light skin. She could absolutely pass as a white child right now. Who knows what she'll grow into? She looks, I mean, she's a baby or toddler, but I am a curly haired, brown skinned girl walking around with a blonde haired, blue eyed mother. And I don't know if Ashley, you experienced this. I would assume you must have, but people would always say, "Oh, are you adopted?" They did not understand that that was my mom. Right. So it's a whole different feeling now looking at my daughter and people saying, "Oh, she looks just like you." And I look at her and I'm like, "You don't look like me at all. You have a completely different skin tone than me." I see it a little bit, but I'm like, it's a very interesting feeling that just fuels me more to raise her as herself. And I think I would be doing her a disservice if I raised her as a Black woman or a white woman. She's a biracial child that needs to understand she can make her way into society, into her place however she wants to, as long as I teach her who she is and where she comes from, because she sees her grandfather, my dad, and sees that he's Black. And I think she's starting to see different things. And it is so, so important to me that she understands exactly where she comes from. How she chooses to put her mark on the world, that's up to her, but it's completely up to us to show her. And it's also such a beautiful thing that she can look at all the colors that she does see in just the people of her, in her little network. Her daycare provider is a Black woman, and that was not, I mean, it was kind of by accident, but not really now. And she's married to a man and they have biracial children. And it's just, it's an incredible thing that we're surrounding her with this now.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think like one of the most important things for her that I've, as a teacher, I think that I see this every day is representation. I think we got t-shirts when, Kamala Harris was vice president, said my vice president looks like me. And we gave it to Parker, right? Because like for her to look at the TV and see this woman who, looks like her in this position of power, I think that's like really important for her to see that.
Yes.
So, no matter what she does, where she goes, what path she chooses, I think it's super important that she can have people to look at that do look like her, that are people of color, that are, maybe biracial, like people who she can associate with. And like as a white male, I've never had to think twice about that, right? Like no matter what I wanted to do, if I wanted to be an athlete, if I wanted to be a teacher, if I wanted to be whatever it was, there's always a white male at the top of the list, right? No matter what I do. So like as a parent now, I find it so important to seek out these people who she can, look at and feel proud of. And I think it's, as educators, Gavin can probably speak to this too, is to make sure that our kids grow up to be those people that are looked up to, right? To give them those opportunities. Because, maybe when Parker grows up and she becomes the president, there's people who can look at her and, feel that strong connection with her. So it all kind of feeds into each other, right? Like we're doing it for us, but we're doing it for our future generations as well. So I think for her, and like Alyssa said, like she can pass as white. So there's never gonna be a time where I'm gonna walk down the street with Parker and people are gonna question it, right? Like we look enough alike where it's not, and I can never imagine what that would be like as a parent to not, to feel like people don't believe you, that just blows my mind that people can be so close-minded that if your kid doesn't look like you, they can't be your kid, right? Like, right. It's wild.
Yeah, can I actually add on to that really quick? And I want to like take over your pod, Ashley, and like ask you a question, if that's
you
okay.
You can ask me whatever you want.
Because when with you guys talking about that, it just like fires me up on the inside. And my older sister is married to a white man, so her kids are biracial, and so this is something that they go through as well. And my sister has darker complexion skin tone than I do, and my brother-in-law is like could not be more Irish. And my niece looks, for lack of a better description, like she's biracial. And my nephew is like, he looks like a little light bulb. Like he is like Irish, okay, like fully Irish. And when he was younger and my sister would like go to the mall and like take him places, people actually would ask her if she was his nanny.
No,
because
oh my God,
their
no.
complexion was
No.
so like their complexion was so on opposite ends of the spectrum. And when she told me that, I would be like, wait, like I couldn't even process what that situation is like. And if it were me, I probably would like jump over the counter at somebody. So I'm wondering, Mark and Ashley, sort of like, obviously Alyssa and Mike were able to share their experience so far, but what do those conversations look like for you guys now that you got a bun in the oven?
Yeah. For me, I like definitely have this, oh my God, what is he going to look like? Because for me, the conversation is going to be totally different if he passes for white or if he doesn't. Because there's responsibility on both sides for me. Because also, like, if you pass for white, like, don't you dare think for 1 second, right, that you're better than anybody else for whatever reason, or right, like, especially, I mean, I feel like I'm such a Black mom. Like, I'm gonna be like, you live in my house, like, until you are paying some bills, you know what I mean? Like, this is how it's gonna be, and this is right, like, we're not gonna pretend like you're not Black, or that your granddad isn't Black, or that your mom isn't Black, or whatever it is, right? And so, like, that's one. And then the other side is like, whether he passes or doesn't pass, like, there's still this need for me to be like this kid may die because of what he looks like. And that is fucking terrifying to me. That's the shit that keeps me up at night. Like, one, will I even make it through labor? Like, I hope this hospital isn't racist and I hope I don't die. That's number one. And number two, like, will my son live a full life? And that's like, for me, that's what I think about. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, and we talk about this often, and obviously those weigh incredibly heavy on me. And, you know, the other thing that I think about often is, you know, Gavin and Mike, you even alluded to it a little bit as well, is on the one side, right, there's this concept that you have to be perfect, right, in a Black body, and you can't make mistakes. But on the other side, right, the road to perfection is often paved by the courage to be able to make mistakes. And, you know, there's this balance that as we're raising this child, right, given them the freedom and the courage to go out there and say things and do things that may not be perfect, but will enable them to grow and show up in a way that, in my head, will allow them to elevate themselves. But on the same side, if you're not perfect, you're viewed through a different lens. And like that messes with me a lot, right? Because what do you do? And I guess that's the thing I struggle with also.
Yeah. It's not, I just know that, like, this isn't going to be easy. And we definitely thought we were having a girl, and definitely, like, wanted a girl first for this, partly for this reason, because I was not ready for a Black boy. I'll be totally honest, was not ready for it. Still don't feel ready for it. But I mean, I hope that answers your question, Asia. I don't know what else to say about it. I'm fucking scared, okay?
Ashley, we were talking about this too when we found out Parker was going to be a girl. It's like, we were saying how fucked up it is that not only, you know, the color of their skin is going to, you know, decide whether or not they're safe or not, but their gender, right? Like,
yes,
we were saying, like, if we had a boy who, like you said, maybe doesn't pass as white, like, it's a whole nother conversation that you have to have. It's a whole nother kind of way of parenting. I feel like, you know, it's just so messed up that in this world, the gender and color of a person is going to decide whether or not people think that they're a criminal, right? Like,
yeah.
And the fact that as a parent, you have to have that weighing on you that, like, I'm responsible for making my kid, you know their place. Like, what type of nonsense is that, right? Like, it's just unfair. And I think, like, making sure that we raise people and we raise students who are kids. There's a teacher in me, students who like understand how messed up that is and who want to do something about that.
Right.
You know, because I think there's so many people who are in positions of power who are almost a lost cause at this point. You know, and it's about like
Yeah, they are.
bringing up that next generation of leaders who, you know, have, you know, a little bit more sense than the people who have been there for, you know, dozens and dozens of years.
Right. Did anyone want to talk about Black kids and white kids? Because I'm like kind of going to segue into sort of kids, but not kids. So I want to
I'm gonna leave.
Go ahead.
I'll leave you with this. I'm a quote collector, and there's a book, Kiesi Layman's Heavy, and he says, "Really, we're fighting because she raised me to never forget, and she being his mom, I was born on parole, which means no Black hoodies in wrong neighborhoods, no jogging at night, hands in plain sight at all time in public, no intimate relationships with white women, never driving over the speed limit or doing those rolling stops at stop signs, always speaking the King's English in the presence of white folks, never being outperformed in school or in public by white students, and most importantly, always remembering that no matter what, the worst of white folks will do anything to get you." I think just what you guys were talking about right there, that really resonated with me. And the book is really heavy. His relationship with his mom isn't great in the same ways that when I'm reading Between the World and Me, right? You see some of the harsh things that Ta-Nehisi Coates is talking about, and I really think it's sort of the reality, right? It is my lived experience. As a child, like Blackness wouldn't have been one of the first things that I would use to define myself. I'm an athlete. I'm a student. I'm, you know, the mother. I'm the son to my mother, right? I'm all of these things, and now as an adult, without a doubt in my mind, Blackness is one of the first things that I highlight about myself, right? And it's sort of because of the world and the importance of positionality that we don't fully touch on or understand enough if you don't have that lived experience.
I would never take a jog at night around my neighborhood.
No, me either.
Just
What?
don't feel, even during the day when the sun is out and it's bright as day, I still don't even really feel that comfortable jogging. And right every time before I start, I think about what possibly could happen. And I just know at nighttime I would never even attempt to do that. And I know Asia and I, we spoke about that on the podcast in the past. But yeah, that's a thought that always goes through my mind.
Yeah,
So messed
me
up.
too. Me too. Continuing with this, I'm about to ask y'all about y'all jobs. Starting with Asia, because you work in corporate fundraising for Greater Boston Food Bank. And obviously with, you know, the Courage campaign, what you do is tied into something that is a part of our why. And so I guess I just want to ask you, like, is there anything that people should know about the food bank, how it serves people, why we should give the food bank money, like anything that would awaken people's sense of community and giving?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously our work has increased tremendously since being in a pandemic. And I think what is really been the awakening for a lot of people seeing food insecurity right now it's all over the news. It's in our faces more than maybe it was pre-pandemic. And I used to say this pre-pandemic, but it's really becoming real now, which was, you know, people always think that hunger has a certain face or looks a certain way or whatever, wears a certain type of clothing. Like, I don't know. People really do have made up thoughts in their head about what people experiencing hunger look like. And it's usually in their head, people of color, right? And what I want to emphasize is, like, especially in Massachusetts, where pre-pandemic, Massachusetts is the most expensive state in the country to purchase food from a grocery store. So that's number one. The cost of living here, as we all on this Zoom know, is ridiculous. So pre-pandemic, the people that were needing support and needing help with meals were your neighbor, people that you would never ever expect. And what the pandemic is now showing us is even more of those people, your neighbors. These are middle class individuals.
Wow.
These are not low class individuals needing to go to pantries. These are people who maybe had two household incomes, or your household income is in the six figures and one person lost their job and now you're at a food pantry. And a lot of people in this pandemic have had to turn to food pantries for the first time in their lives, which is a very humbling experience for people. And so I just say all that to say, you know, right now, from a statistics standpoint, 1 in 5 kids in Massachusetts is food insecure. So it's just like, why? This is the United freaking States of America. Not a single person in this country should be food insecure. It honestly blows my mind. And I think, like I said, if there was any time to give to your local pantry or to the food bank, it would be now, because what's going to happen is once everybody has the vaccine and once life is back to quote unquote normal, the longest effect of this pandemic is going to be food insecurity. I mean, this is the last sort of piece of the puzzle that people are going to be able to pick back up in their lives once this is all over. And the fact of the matter is, when people have to decide what bills get paid and what they prioritize, food is usually the last thing. Or maybe it's food for their kid and not themselves, you know? So I will just say that. I mean, I think obviously our frontline workers, our warehouse workers, and our truck drivers are the real heroes right now. I've been working from home, so I don't even feel like I can take credit for what's going on in terms of getting the food out to the community. But I mean, yeah, it's alarming how serious this need is, and it's happening in communities you would never know. The Newtons, the Welsleys, you name it. There's need in the entire state. So it's crazy. And I feel like people don't think about that a lot. And the point is, hunger doesn't really have a face. Like, truly, this is a serious issue for everyone.
Asia, I so appreciate you bringing that up. There's actually a person that worked with me in our office in Foxborough. So I work in a corporate environment. This individual worked for us for years, and this goes back a little ways, but we found out that he was sleeping in his car out in the parking lot because someone had called the police. And this dude was homeless, and he would actually wait for us to have like free bagel Thursdays. And he would like take more than a normal share and bring it in his car. And that's what he would eat with peanut butter. And like, we were all just blown away when we found this is a dude that literally just works in a corporate environment beside us, and you would never know. So,
well, yeah, there's a stigma, right? Like, there's a stigma, especially if you have a job. It's like, why can't you pay for your own food? Because my rent is $2,500 a month.
He has kids and the whole thing. Exactly right.
Yeah, and that's the first thing people will give up when financially they're strapped, unfortunately.
Wow. Asia, should people be giving money, or should they be giving like food items?
Yeah, money is always preferred. Money goes the farthest. Because of our purchasing power as a food bank, we get food at really reduced prices. Okay. So your dollar is going to go farther. Our conversion is $1 provides 3 meals. So whatever you can give, multiply that by 3 to understand how many meals you're impacting that you're able to help us provide to the community. And yeah, right now we're actually only taking food donations from our grocery retail partners at like in bulk, because I mean, we're distributing last fiscal year, we distributed almost 100 million pounds of food in the year, the first year of the pandemic. Wow. So the speed at which that stuff is going in and out of the building is the reason why we just encourage donations, just because we would never be able to manage unless, I mean, your local pantry, your backyard pantry, right, the pantry in your church, like those people definitely are taking food donations. But for the food bank specifically, your dollar can go a lot farther.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Someone also told me, someone was also telling me about like formula and baby food, like stuff that I don't, of course, like why would I think about like baby
Yeah.
food before I was
Well,
pregnant, but like stuff like that too for parents, for caregivers.
yeah, that's a really good example because stuff like that, diapers, formula, things for babies, that's stuff that the food bank doesn't necessarily distribute. So, but your local pantry like counts on community donations of that type of stuff because that's not something they can get in bulk from us. So if you do have access to those type of things, definitely donate to your local pantry because there's definitely a need for that stuff and it's an item that you can't get from the food bank specifically in bulk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to go to Mike and Alyssa, and then to Jared and then to Gavin, just so we like know. Mike and Alyssa, you guys both teach at Rev'd, and I love Rev'd because everyone there is so different. Like y'all to me look like what fitness should look like. You have different races, you have different ages, you have different body types, you have different genders, you have gay people, you have straight people, and like being in the room, the riders all look different too, right? And then like coming off of Soul Cycle, obviously it's like, oh my God, like no one's gonna yell at me if I'm like not on the beat, or like no one's gonna, oh my God, I don't have to wear the clothes. Like I don't have to put my eyebrows on. I can just come here and work out and they accept me. Like, wait, so I just want to talk about how it came to be that, and like, what do you guys do to keep this environment going, and how do you plan on making it more diverse in the future, like rider wise? Because I know that you didn't really get a chance to really open in the city because as soon as you opened, everything went out. And so I feel like there's a whole market that still doesn't even know how amazing y'all are. So like, tell me everything.
So it starts at the top, which I would probably say that about any industry, any big company, any place ever. But for those of you who don't know, Megan St. Mark and Clyde Sims are owners. Megan is a white woman. Clyde is a Black man. I do not think they met up and said, hey, you're a woman, I'm a Black man, let's start a company together because that'll be good. They are the most incredible leaders. And I think that they have just, again, if I had to sum it up without talking for hours about why Rev'd is such an incredible place for all of those reasons that you listed, it's because they have created a place where everybody is welcome. And what I love about their leadership is kind of going what I said before about authenticity is we don't force anything. So do we sit and have conversations about staying up to date with what's going on and in Boston fitness, in Massachusetts fitness in general, and now Rhode Island too? Mm-hmm. How can we stay relevant? How can we keep up? What do we need to do? We have conversations, I mean, almost daily about how to grow and expand, but we never do anything that doesn't seem like us. We'll have conversations like, oh, hey, it's Black History Month. Should we do something? Yes, when it inspires us, you'll see us come out with a post or you'll see a ride come out or something, but we're not going to sit down and say, hey, we need to check all these boxes right now. We need to fill all these quotas, or we need to have this many Black instructors, this many gay instructors, that's never been our way. It's just, like I said, trickles down from the top because we see Megan and Clyde as our leaders of just being open people. I mean, I don't know how many people on this call have had the pleasure of meeting them, but they're so open and honest and real and authentic. And if you meet Megan, she lights up a room. If you meet Clyde, he's a little bit quieter, but it kind of reminded me what you said, Asia and Jared, about the way that you guys interact together. It's like Megan is the voice and Clyde is the thought, if that makes sense. And I think you're right. We opened up in Boston and closed down 7 days later after working for a year to get it open. We do have our pop-up open, which is great, but you look around a room and we both taught a class this afternoon. I looked out and it was colorful. I mean, I'm smiling because it just makes me so happy that I feel a responsibility. I mean, there are not many of us, Ashley and Boston Fitness, of instructors of color in general, and I think in spin in particular. But I would go so far as to say that I want to just make people feel comfortable, and it goes beyond the color of your skin. It goes beyond your sexual orientation, body type, like you said. Is if you look at our instructors, we certainly all do not all look the same.
None of y'all look the same. None of you
No,
look the
not
same.
even a little bit. And I think in the beginning, it's like, oh, you want to be like this person, or you aspire to be like this type of instructor. And then I don't want to say we don't have to try hard, but we don't. It's because they've just set that example up top as, let's just be ourselves. And like I said, we've signed things, we come up with ideas, but if it doesn't fit into the Rev'd way, we're like, people are going to see if it's forced. If we put something out there and said something that was outside of who we are, people would be like, Rev'd is just trying to check a box. And that's just, it's not us.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think it is, oftentimes we make all of this harder than it needs to be, versus like just show up as a good human, right? And support other good humans, and like good shit will happen. But to your point, it so often becomes about the script and about checking boxes, and then it becomes inauthentic, and then
then you get fucking canceled.
Yeah, there you go.
If you ever walk down Boylston Street during Pride Month, you just see like all these storefronts and shops throw up the rainbow flags on their storefronts and windows and things like that. But that just doesn't really feel authentic. So I'm happy that Rev'd is a place that actually has that authenticity, and actually do things the right way.
That's such a great point.
It's so important. And as a fitness instructor, like Ashley said in the beginning, people trust you. And it's like, I feel it in my core of anything that I say or put out there. People trust me, from what I wear down to what I say, to how I raise my kid, to what I feed her, to how I treat my husband. Like it's a big burden sometimes, to be honest. And I think all of us here, again, understand what it's like to say, I had a friend today who she went away for the weekend with her husband, and people reached out to her and they're like, where are you? You haven't posted on social media. What are you doing? And she's like, oh, we chatted, and we're like, oh my goodness, it's a little scary sometimes that you can't disconnect without people being like, are you okay? But at the same time, I don't look at it as a negative. I look at it as huge positive. So again, I'm not going to do anything that's outside of me, but I've had riders come up to me and open up about, even being 2 weeks pregnant, or just finding out that they're pregnant. Or I've had someone tell me about gender reconstruction surgery because they feel comfortable telling me that. And that means that I must be doing something right. And the amount of people that come to us saying, I've never felt this welcome anywhere else. You will never hear us talk about another place. You will never hear us talk down on anywhere else. You will just hear us talk about how incredible Rev'd is, because we do our best, and that's all we can do. So
That it feels like it. It feels like it. And I'm such a huge fan. It almost makes me wish I was like teaching spin again, because I would be like begging y'all for a job. I would die.
Ready.
Post baby, you know who to call.
Girl, I'm like out of breath just walking anymore. Like I couldn't get on a bike. We were waiting for our Peloton. So I don't know. I might be practicing.
Well, I know how to watch on-demand rides on other bikes. So
yes.
if you want to take my class or Mike's class, you just let us know.
Yes, I am. Like, I'm actually kind of excited because there's no other cardio that I'm really doing right now, because I'm not going outside and I'm not running in the cold. Which, Gavin, sorry, you're probably outside running in the cold, but I'm not doing it. Mike, did you want to add anything to that?
Mark kind of stole the words right out of my mouth. If you're a good person, people are going to come to you. I say it all the time, like especially to new instructors or people just getting into fitness. I can go to any studio in the city, the state, and I'll work out and I'll sweat, right? I'm going to work hard. But if I like that person, I'm going to work so much harder for them,
Yeah.
and I'm going to want to come back. You know, like I feel like people don't come to my class necessarily because of my style or because of like how hard I make them work. I think they just like to come hang out with me, right? Like that's kind of the way I see it. And if I can be that friend, if I can be that person that, you know, and I think it's harder as a guy in spin to be that friend because there's this kind of like, I don't know, like the stigma attached to male spin instructors. And I think it's a little bit harder to crack, you know, that egg a little bit. But I think once people start to get to know you, and then, you know, luckily I have Alyssa who posts everything that I do on social media. So people are like, oh, he's like a normal guy. He's not that scary. Right? Like, oh, like he eats spoonfuls of peanut butter. He's pretty cool. Like, I think when people get to know you, they open up more and they realize that you're not there to judge them, or you're not there to, you know, to chastise them for not working hard enough. Like you're just there to motivate them.
Yeah.
And I always say I work harder. Like as an athlete growing up, I worked harder for coaches who I could kind of get along with, and people who I could talk to, and people who, you know, cared about me. So I think it just comes down to not just saying you care and not just like pretending you care, but actually putting in the work to care.
Yeah. I feel that. Thank you. Jared, to me, you have like the worst kind of job because you're corporate, which includes Mark and Asia. So, so as like you know, as we're like wrapping up, what is it like to be a Black man in corporate? What do you want to say to people? How is this like, do you feel like you have to be an example? Like what is this world that I want nothing a part of, but I want your opinion?
So I feel that we as Black people, we have to put a face on. You can't be your authentic self in the office. When I first started in the corporate world, right out of college, I worked for the Celtics. And I thought everybody was my friend there. I thought I can just be myself, say whatever, especially like when we're not in the office, things like that. And I learned quickly that your coworkers are not your friends. You can't just be your blackity black self. Even you would think that like in the NBA with the culture and things like that, you can do whatever, you can say whatever, but not in the front office, not in the corporate space. From there, I actually went down to Hartford, Connecticut. I was working with UConn Athletics at a sporting arena. And I learned with the Celtics that I need to be a little bit more reserved, put that face on, just do everything right, do everything correctly, properly. And then I left there, got out of the sports world and went to a more corporate space now with Salesforce. But to give them credit, they do a great job. They have a lot of inclusion, a lot of diversity. That's one of their core values. So they actually make you feel at home and feel at safe. So now I've been there about 3 or 4 years now. So now I'm starting to feel that I actually can be myself, and that every position you're at, you really don't have to put a face on and act differently. For example, as we've been in this quarantine and work from home, when it first started, the barbershops were closed. I thought that I was looking kind of crazy on Zoom calls and things like that. My head was looking wild. So I actually put a do-rag on and hopped on a Zoom call.
No, you didn't.
And I felt perfectly fine.
Wow.
Felt perfectly okay. And then I saw Black women with their head wraps on, their scarves on, things like that. And I'm like, okay, so I feel like it depends on where you're at in the corporate space. Obviously, you have to know your surroundings. Obviously, you have to know the company you're at. But for my specific company, Salesforce, they do a lot to give back to the community, give back to their employees. Very inclusive. They have their own department just based on equality and inclusion, things like that. So it makes you feel as safe and feel at home. But no matter what position I'm at, no matter what job I'm at, I'm still not going to be 100% myself as a Black man in corporate America. I'm still going to have somewhat of a face on, somewhat of a, I don't want to call it a disguise, but you're just not 100% you.
Right.
And I feel like that's probably going to be a lot of Black men or even Black women in the corporate space. I'm
so glad to hear the positives, because I didn't think you were going to have anything good to say, quite frankly.
Oh, no. No, I mean, Salesforce, like I said, they do a great job. So I'll give them credit, but
every Black person listening to this is like going to go apply to Salem Ward right now. No, but that, I mean, you not being able to show up as your full self makes total sense. What I expected you to say, but also I'm glad that you can show up as more of yourself than you could previously. What were you thinking?
And that's exactly where I was going to go, because I think, and maybe you saw that play out, right? Every time I think you do that in a space in full view of others, it provides evidence, and there's no like retribution, right? It provides evidence that inclusion is more than just the word. It actually is more of a culture. And the hope would be the more often that happens, the more of your true self could come out, even though it might not always be 100%. But I think
definitely.
it's just so important to kind of create that culture, because I mean, without it, I mean, the full brilliance of your corporation never comes out either, because everyone's hesitating, right?
Yeah, that's real.
So that's really great to hear.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you say that. So actually, there's a kid on my team. He's also Black. I actually hired him on. He reports up to me. So I was the first one in our little group setting to put the do-rag on in the Zoom call. And he was in the same boat. His barbershops were closed. He probably was feeling a certain type of way. A few weeks later, I see him on the Zoom with the do-rag. And I'm like, okay, there's some comfortability there now.
There you
Like
go.
he feels comfortable enough to do that.
Yeah.
And then we open it up to like different, like larger calls. So it's like the whole Eastern region. And then you might see somebody else there with the do-rag. And you already see the women, they're 100% comfortable. I don't know what's going on with them, but there's a ton of Black women on the calls with just head wraps on and scarves on. I'm like, I love it. I love it. So that also gives us the comfortability to do it as well. So
Yeah.
it's a dope thing to see. But I still feel like no matter what, you still really can't be 100% yourself, and you shouldn't be. You still should be a little bit reserved just for the corporate setting. But I think that's something that's always going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I was just thinking to myself, like, would I teach with my scarf on? Probably not. Like, there's still just like, there's still, yeah, I don't think I would do it. My scarf also keeps like sliding off my head, so I never wake up with it on anyway. So.
No, Ashley, I was saying I was laughing, cracking up on mute because I'm the same way. Like I have frantically ripped my scarf off because I like came to a Zoom meeting thinking it would be appropriate to keep my camera off, and then everyone's cameras are on, so I'm like, shh. Like I'm
second.
Yeah, at the last second. So I
Oh my
agree,
God.
Jared. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear there are Black women out there that are comfortable on their work calls with scarves. Sounds like a place to work for sure.
And I mean, it also opens it up for dialogue, because like I've worn the do-rag and I've actually had like a white woman reach out to me, be like, hey, what is that on your head? And I didn't take it as like disrespect. I just took it as like they just don't know. Yeah. So I'll give them some information, let them know what it is, and then they can go from there. So, I mean,
I love this. I
That's
love
amazing.
everything about
if I didn't understand what somebody else had on their head and I needed to ask, then I guess I would do that. But I didn't take it as disrespect. So
I love it. Love it. Gavin, from you, I would love to know what we could do better when it comes to our schools, our kids. I don't know if you want to talk to parents. I don't know if you want to talk to teachers. I don't know if you want to talk to everybody, but what can we do? That's a big fucking question. I'm sorry.
No, I was taking notes. I always do that. And I loved what Alyssa said when she said it starts at the top, right? I think just me being able to be in the position that I'm in is a start, right? I want the floodgates to open. I want to see more Black and Brown, BIPOC principals, educators, right? You have to be an educator. You have to be a teacher to get to principalship, to get to superintendency. We talked a lot about being comfortable in spaces, and it's really amazing that, public school spaces, the spaces that we're talking about when we're talking about things like the achievement gap and equity and diversity, and so many other things, culturally and linguistically sustaining practices, right, are the places where, a lot of people don't feel comfortable. I remember just having a conversation with my sister and saying, we need to go back to our local school. She's like, why would a lot of people do that if they didn't have a good time in their school setting, right? If school wasn't a positive space for them. I think to Lisa Delpit's work and other people's children, right? And thinking about like, all we really need to do is this level of empathy, right? Our spaces for Black and brown people would be better if you treated them as if they were spaces for white people, right? Spaces for your kids. Understanding that there are differences in culture and in so many other things, but it would just be better. As a principal, my hiring practices is I'm intentionally looking for Black and brown talent. And I am also intentionally recognizing that there are things within our hiring practices that may not be right and may single those individuals out. But guess what? I could see the good in those individuals because I am one, right? I am that person. I've had people share the same biases towards me, say I wasn't good enough, or I didn't speak well enough, or I didn't answer that question right, right? And those are just arbitrary. What I know that kids need is they need individuals that care about them deeply. I think, hearing the conversation, Mike was talking about working hard for his coaches and his coaches and the coaches working hard for them as well. And when I'm talking to teachers, people will tell you, and I am a very calm person. One thing I do not stand for under any circumstance is if you are not willing to put in the work for our children and then put the blame on them. There's this deficit there. They're starving. They're this, they're that. None of those things are preventative, right? None of those things prevent you from being successful. They are definitely barriers. But my question in education is, how do we remove those barriers so there can be more Gavin Smiths, right? So that we can have more Barack Obamas, right? In these spaces, Kamala Harris, so we can have more of those in these spaces. And, I think for me, it is all about the understanding, right? The work is really important now. The anti-racist work is really important now. I don't even like using the terms anymore because I think, as Alyssa said, you got to be authentic. In education, a lot of times we check boxes. There's an achievement gap. There's a learning loss, right? Like all of these things that you're hearing about in the news, et cetera. I've been in classroom spaces. I've been in schools where I've seen people who are dedicated to their craft. They're not going to let students falter regardless. They're making home visits. They're getting food, providing food to students. They're doing high level things, right? And then also like it's education, right? It's not like a sympathy party, right? Like it's education. You got to go out there and educate our kids, right? Like you really do. And I think a lot of times what I see is this level of, oh, I feel so bad for this person, or I feel so, they have to work so hard and their family situation is terrible. And it's like, when I am in that setting, and I heard Jared talking about corporate settings, and you come from that, right? And you recognize what it takes to get out of that situation, and that the awes aren't going to do you any good, right? They don't. When you get to a certain age, when you go to college or when you enter the workforce, there are no more awes, right? In fact, it's like, we kind of hate you, right? Like we're trying to, right? Like it's definitely like, we don't know who you are. We don't understand you, right? Like we don't know what the do-rag is, right? They don't know. They don't see the waves spinning. They don't understand that life, right? They're just like, what is that? Right? And some of it is innocent. Some of it is not. Some of it needs to be learned. But right, like the best thing that we can do for our children in this time is educate. Is educate them and educate them well. That is all we are asking for. That is all we are ever asking for. Brown versus Board of Education was we want the same education as you, right? We want access to the same education because we want access to the same opportunities because we are equally as gifted, equally as talented, right? And because of our oppression and the systems that oppress us, we actually have some really magical skills that we use to navigate spaces that are beneficial to everybody, right? So having a Black person in corporate is magical, right? Having a Latinx person is magical, right? The reason is because like we are masterful. A bunch of David Blaines, right?
You're preaching right now.
Yes.
Because that is who we have to be to navigate these spaces. And it's tiring. So when I hear you say you don't want to work or it's too much, you're talking to the wrong person. You are saying the wrong things. Do more, do better, right? I think for me, this equity work, this anti-racist work, this talk, like let's stop talking, let's be actionable. Right? Let's be actionable. The young people are actionable. They were out burning things, right? Received backlash for it. But we knew what it was. It's tired, it's rage. We are tired. we are. I'm tired of going to school every day and hearing that this kid can't do this because of this circumstance, right? Like I was that kid. How are you gonna tell me they can't do it? Not only can they do it, they can do it well. They can do it as well as your kid, better than. Give them the opportunity. So, I think there's a lot of really good things that we're learning through education now in this moment. There are a lot of people doing some great work. I know some young principals, some principals of color who are doing some phenomenal work and who are bringing these things to the table. And I'm so grateful for that. But I think, we need more people to listen, to listen and then to do the work, to listen to what Black and brown folks are saying and say, how do I do that? Yes. How do I fix the gaps in transportation? How do I fix food insecurity? How do I help fix the criminal justice system, right? How do I help fix the education system? How do I help fix every system that is wronging you all, right? It's not like, oh, I just bought a house in Dorchester. Now I'm gonna go protest about gentrification. Like, no, you just moved 20 families out of the neighborhood and then you're gonna come in here and talk about that, right? Like, that's not it, right? So like really think about how you're going to move that work and what you're willing to give up in order to do that. I had a colleague of mine who I shout out all the time because I think he really gets it. And one of the things he recently did for me is he wrote a letter to my superintendent, right? He's like, this guy is a special talent and you need to recognize and amplify him. Wow. And he didn't have to do that, right? There was nothing, what does he gain from that? But what he recognizes is that there are many children that will gain something from it. There's the district that will gain something from it, right? So those are the things that we legitimately have to do. Give up the money, right? Give up the power. That's how you get the respect. And I'm gonna drop the mic now, but that's what I.
Yeah. You dropped the mic about 10 minutes ago, dude. That was incredible.
You can't drop me.
That was incredible. So the thing also that I don't think is lost is everything you just said applies outside of education, right? The concept of empathy versus sympathy And like the word that I think you kept going back to is be intentional, right? We can't fix this if we're not intentional about it.
Mhm.
We can't fix corporate cultures if we're not intentional about actually going after the problem. Or even at Rev, right? The intention is be a good human. Like whatever that is, this concept of intentionality, I guess.
Intentionality.
Intentionality. Is that a word?
We're gonna name this episode "Be Intentional."
It's just awesome.
It's right. It's there.
Yeah. Magical.
Damn, y'all.
Magical.
Thank you so. Who's plugging stuff? Probably okay. Just tell people where to stalk you, where to find you, where to spend their money with you. Yes, and so we can like it's Valentine's Day. We all need to like have our sexy time. It's okay. Like no one in my family listens to this, so I can get away. I can get away with saying anything because I'm never gonna get caught. Jared, let's start with you. Where can people find you?
Well, I'm gonna start with Done With Adulting Pod on Instagram. Come check us out. We've had Ashley on the pod
Twice.
yeah, a couple of times, and she's come and dropped jewels and gems. So definitely check us out there.
Thank you, sir. Asia.
Yeah, same. Done With Adulting Pod for sure. My personal Instagram is at Simply Asia Noel. But Ashley, I was gonna ask you, we at Done With Adulting Podcast were wondering after this episode releases on your podcast, if we could also release it on ours as another.
Absolutely.
I just have really enjoyed this conversation, and I just feel like as many people that can hear it should hear it. So if you will allow us, we would love to do that.
Yes,
be
as
amazing.
long as, Gavin, Alyssa, Mike, as long as you're okay with further amplification, which I don't see why not, but
Hey,
yes,
let's go.
Yes, let's go.
The only other thing I'll plug is obviously the food bank. It's great, GR, and then the number 8 BOSS, BOS food bank on all platforms. So you can definitely keep
Thank
up
you.
with our work there and get any information about how you can help with that as well.
Yes, thank you. Alyssa and Mike.
So I will plug Rev, which we've talked a lot about, but we have right now we're open. We have 4 socially distant studios in the Copley Place Mall. Our Hingham actual studio is open. It's very, very COVID safe. We have socially distant studios in Foxborough and Dedham. And for anyone that has a bike at home, it's revedondemand.com. We have 20-minute classes all the way through 60 minutes with themes. It's a lot of fun. So I'm at The Real APBP on Instagram. And Mike?
I'm at The Mike on a Bike on Instagram.
I love it. I love it. I feel like the first time I saw you at Barry's, like you were taking class, and I was like, oh my God, it's the Mike on a bike. It's like, we do this now. We know people by their handles.
So sad.
Wow.
It's so great.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
great.
so great. It is so
Are
great.
are you two at the Boston location, or are you at Hingham, or do you guys bounce around?
We're both of
All
us
over.
are at all 4. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, we're both in Copley. Come see us.
Damn, y'all be working hard. Gavin.
Ashley, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah. I mean,
Man.
maybe we should say if you want to talk to Gavin, you could come through me.
It's the same thing I do, so it's all cool.
So where do
Right.
you want people to find you? LinkedIn, Insta?
Yeah, hit up the LinkedIn. It's Gavin Smith. I don't actually know what it is, but really, I think Ashley, you speak about the most important thing. One day I'm gonna have my own school, right? And I really do mean that. That's intentional for me, and I want to be able to amplify all of the things that I say on this podcast and just every time you speak to me. So when that time comes, give up the coins.
Y'all are hearing it first right here. He is putting this out into the universe.
Yes,
Let's
only if
work that.
I will give up the coins. I just need to know that everybody on this podcast, kid, has a reserved spot at your
Facts.
school.
Yes. I do want to reserve.
I will pay the money. I just need to know my unborn child's spot is secured.
You
Same.
got it. You
Same.
got it.
Same.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Everyone listening, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's all.
Yeah, it's all.
It's Valentine's Day. I'm gonna go take my clothes off. So
Thank you for providing the space.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was
Oh,
so
no
much
problem.
fun.
Agreed.
one
Thank you.
day when it's safe, you'll all come over and change diapers and we can have drinks and like, the whole thing. All right, I'm gonna hit stop on the recording. Bye.